Everything changed in a matter of seconds. You know, the 2025 season, it left scars, deep ones. It was brutal. It was entirely unforgiving. And for the New York Jets, it was the kind of disaster that a lot of people out there genuinely believe broke the franchise's spirit for good. I mean, we are talking about blowing 3 separate double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. 3. We are talking about an offense that, statistically speaking, literally could not cross the 50-yard line when the game was actually on the line. Add in a primetime collapse that turned a season of incredibly high hopes into a national punchline, and yeah, it was bleak. Really bleak. But here's the thing. There's a massive fundamental difference between a broken franchise and a sleeping giant. Welcome to NFL Nexus. In today's explainer, we are pulling back the curtain on exactly what the mainstream media is completely and frankly, willfully ignoring. We're going inside the facility. We're taking you inside the locker room to expose the undeniable, explosive reality that is brewing right now in Florham Park for the 2026 season. The stakes have literally never been higher. Before we expose the truth of what's really happening on the turf, if you want the most intense, detailed football analysis on the internet, you need to subscribe to the NFL Nexus channel right now. Like this explainer, drop a comment with your thoughts as we go through this evidence, and please support the channel by becoming a channel member. We can't do these deep dives without you. Okay, let's dive into this. Because what you are about to see, it changes the entire landscape of the AFC. I want you to just look at this number. Really, just sit with it for a second. 31 out of 32 teams in the National Football League. This is exactly where Yahoo Sports placed the New York Jets in their preseason power rankings. Second to last, the absolute basement of professional football. Only the Miami Dolphins sit lower on their list. It is a staggering, breathtaking level of disrespect. And frankly, as an analyst, it's a number that completely ignores context, ignores the actual roster construction, and completely ignores reality. When you see a number like 31 attached to a team, it signals an organization in complete catastrophic freefall. But why? Why did Yahoo place them here? Well, it's the easiest, laziest narrative to write, isn't it? They're assuming this is just a bridge year. The media is vastly overvaluing the trauma of last season instead of evaluating the actual physical talent standing on the current roster today. They're looking at a coaching transition and equating that with a total lack of foundational talent. They assume that because the 2025 season ended in utter chaos, the 2026 offseason must simply be a continuation of that exact same chaos. But is that actually the truth? Let's look a little closer at what they're saying. Look at the exact quote from Yahoo Sports senior writer Frank Schwab. He literally wrote, and I quote, "It'll be another long season for New York, but the ray of hope is a top 5 pick in next year's draft." He actually went as far as to say that when the Jets inevitably earn that top pick, a new coach will be drafting a new quarterback. I mean, think about the sheer audacity of that statement. They have already written the obituary for the 2026 Jets before a single solitary snap has been played in the regular season. They are assuming a bottom-dwelling, top 5 draft pick season is an absolute certainty. The narrative is set in stone for them. But here's the reality check. Narratives don't win football games. Talent, scheme, and execution win football games. And when we actually sit down and analyze the incredibly complex moves made by this front office this offseason, the math simply doesn't add up to the 31st best team in football. Not even close. Part 1. Reality versus the rankings. Okay, we need to shift our focus away from the national noise and look at the actual roster construction, because the critics miss something monumental here. The Jets didn't just sit on their hands and cry after last year's collapse. They didn't feel sorry for themselves. They executed a comprehensive top-to-bottom overhaul. This isn't the same fragile team that folded in prime time. This is a rebuilt, reloaded roster that fundamentally alters the balance of power. Look at this visual comparison. On the left side, we have the New York Jets. They went out and secured a new quarterback, a guy who is definitively not afraid to push the ball down the field, stretching opposing secondaries to their absolute breaking point. They didn't stop there. They completely rebuilt their offensive line, securing the trenches and making it as complete and deep as it has been in years. They improved from top to bottom. Now, look at the right side of your screen. The Cleveland Browns. The Browns are currently ranked higher than the Jets by these same critics. Yet what did Cleveland actually do this offseason? They traded away their cornerstone, generation-defining defensive superstar Myles Garrett. And they didn't just trade him. They traded him to a Super Bowl contender in a desperate, obvious bid to shed salary and acquire late-round capital. Cleveland inherently has significantly less talent right now than almost any team in pro football, yet they sit above a reloaded Jets team. The logic is entirely flawed. It makes zero sense. And you know, the absurdity only deepens when you look at the rest of the AFC teams ranked above New York. We already covered the Browns surrendering Myles Garrett. But what about the Tennessee Titans?
The Titans decided to fix their broken franchise by bringing in former head coaches Robert Saleh, whose defensive operation completely fractured in New York, and Brian DeBole, whose offense with the Giants was historically anemic. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Tennessee promptly signed 13 former players who were active participants in those exact failed regimes. That is their grand plan. Or how about the Las Vegas Raiders? Sure, they rebuilt their offensive line for Fernando Mendoza, but they are relying entirely on Clint Kubiak's highly complex wide zone scheme to work miracles. If you know football, you know that scheme demands incredibly precise route runners who can execute deep backside digs and crossers at full speed. The Raiders are trying to run this with a completely barren receiver room and a totally revamped, completely unproven linebacking core. Are we really supposed to sit here and believe that these catastrophic, systemic, organizational questions in Tennessee and Vegas are somehow less concerning than the Jets situation? Absolutely not. Ranking them at 31 is just lazy.
So the crucial takeaway here is that not only is the 2026 roster being violently underestimated right now, but the future is uniquely terrifying for the rest of the league. The front office didn't just put band-aids on this roster to build a formidable team for today. They secured immense, game-changing draft capital for tomorrow. 3 first-round picks in 2027. Let me repeat that. 3. How on earth did they orchestrate this? By executing ruthless, calculated trades during the 2025 draft. They leveraged desperate franchises who were all too willing to mortgage their futures just to move up for unproven quarterbacks. They smartly flipped expiring veteran contracts at the trade deadline, methodically stockpiling premium assets while everyone else was panicking. So even while fighting to win right now, this season, the Jets have set up one of the brightest futures in the entire NFL. They have the absolute ammo to make a blockbuster trade at the deadline if they need a missing piece, or they can completely restock the roster with elite collegiate talent. The foundation is rock solid. But as strong as that macro-level view is, the micro-level reality inside training camp is where the true story is unfolding. Part 2. Rising Stars, the Internal Rebellion. We are zooming in now. Forget the national media narratives. Forget the future draft capital for a second. Let's step onto the grass at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center. What is happening right now on that practice field is nothing short of an internal rebellion. You have players fighting for their livelihoods, utterly refusing to accept the narratives written about them. The competition is fierce, the intensity is palpable, and there are 3 specific, highly overlooked players who are completely taking over this team. First, let's talk about the defense. The Jets are currently transitioning to a much more multiple defensive front. They're utilizing a highly complex mix of 3-4 and 4-3 alignments. Now, if you follow defensive schemes, you know this is incredibly taxing on a defense. It demands the massive edge-setting discipline and gap integrity of a heavy 3-4, perfectly combined with the explosive gap-shooting speed of a traditional 4-3. For a linebacker in this system, you have to process run-pass keys in literal milliseconds. If you hesitate for a fraction of a second, you are buried by a 300-pound pulling guard. Enter Marcelino McCrary-Ball. The former special teams captain is emerging as a terrifying weapon in this exact scheme. Throughout these off-season workouts, he has been an absolute force of nature, recording multiple deflections and pass coverage. His sideline-to-sideline speed is a flawless match for the insane processing demands of this new front. He isn't just fighting for a spot on the back end of the 53-man roster anymore. He is fighting to steal significant starting snaps. He's a high-speed missile out there, and opposing offensive coordinators are going to have to take notice very quickly. But the real tectonic shift, the thing that changes everything, is happening on the offensive line. This is Armand Mambu, the former 7th overall pick. Let me be very, very clear with you all right now. We are watching the birth of an absolute superstar. When you sit down and watch his tape, it jumps off the screen. Look at the violent hand placement. Look at the fluid, lightning-fast kick slide he possesses. As a rookie, he didn't just survive on the edge. He held his own against absolute monsters. We're talking about Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, the absolute elite, game-wrecking edge rushers of the National Football League, and he went toe-to-toe with them. Now, in year 2, the development is staggering. The whispers inside the building are already comparing his trajectory to all-time greats. Names like Lane Johnson and Penei Sewell are being thrown around. He is coming into camp on a white-hot streak, and his dominance in the trenches right now is absolute. But hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to the men going to war in the trenches with him every single day. Jets starting center Josh Myers said this directly during OTAs, quote, "Mekhi Boo has the ability to be one of the greats. There's a lot that needs to happen between now and then, but he's got the talent, he's got the mentality." This is pure, unfiltered locker room credibility. We aren't just talking about a guy who is going to be a solid starter. We are talking about a player who by the end of this season could genuinely surpass Garrett Wilson as the best overall player on the entire Jets roster. And why does an offensive tackle being your best player change everything? Think about it. Because a truly elite right tackle neutralizes the opposition's most dangerous pass rusher entirely on an island, without needing extra tight end help, without needing running back chip blocks. It allows the quarterback to dictate his protection sides freely, it completely unlocks the right side of the run game, and it exponentially raises the floor of the entire offense. That isn't media hyperbole, that is the mathematical reality unfolding on the practice field right now.
And the embarrassment of riches just continues in the secondary. The Jets' defensive backfield is already incredibly loaded. You look at that room, you have Nahshon Wright, Brandon Stevens, A.Z. Thomas, Quante Stickers. It is a very crowded, elite room of defensive backs. But Trey Brown, the former fourth-round pick and recent free agent pickup, he utterly refuses to go away quietly. He is turning this training camp into his own personal highlight reel. Picture this specific sequence from a recent minicamp practice. The offense throws a perfectly placed back shoulder fade to the boundary right down in the red zone. The margin for error for the defensive back in that scenario is literally inches. The receiver has the leverage. But Brown doesn't just cover it. He flips his hips seamlessly, he pins the receiver to the boundary using his inside arm, and then he high points the football with his outside hand for a staggering one-handed interception. No way a depth corner should be making that play, but he is making those kinds of plays daily. He is forcing this coaching staff into an incredibly difficult but wonderful position for cut-down day. When your depth pieces are executing at this kind of elite level, your defense is going to be a living nightmare for opposing quarterbacks.
Part 3, the schematic nightmare. Mason Taylor. All right, let's pivot back to the offensive master plan. With a brand new downfield quarterback and a totally rebuilt offensive line anchoring the system, offensive coordinator Frank Reich is currently installing a scheme that is designed to exploit matchups mercilessly. And sitting right at the dead center of this schematic nightmare is sophomore tight end Mason Taylor. This isn't just a story about a young player developing. This is about the absolute perfect marriage of a player's uniquely dominant skill set and a play caller's historic obsession. Just look at this data. This is the stuff that actually changes games in the fourth quarter. Back in 2025, playing with 3 different starting quarterbacks and an incredibly chaotic, broken season, Mason Taylor still managed to post a 79% contested catch rate. Just let that sink in for a moment. 79%. Do you know who the only tight end in the entire National Football League better than him in that metric was? George Kittle. And Taylor was just a rookie. This cold, hard statistic represents a terrifying schematic advantage for New York. Because a contested catch isn't just about jumping high. It is about elite body control in the air. It's about absurd grip strength. It's the physical ability to literally box out a defender like a power forward in the paint, combined with late hands, meaning not showing the defensive back your hands until the absolute last fraction of a second so they can't swipe the ball away. When the field shrinks down in the red zone and the coverage gets impossibly tight, Taylor doesn't even need separation. If the football is anywhere near his catch radius, he is coming down with it.
Now you take that player and you put him in Frank Reich's system. And this data turns into a lethal weapon. Frank Reich's historical track record is clear. He absolutely loves utilizing his tight ends. It is totally foundational to his offensive blueprint, especially down in the red zone. He loves utilizing Y-ISO concepts, splitting his tight ends out wide to force slower linebackers into completely unwinnable space on the outside. Just look at the history. In 2018, as the head coach of the Colts, he unlocked Eric Ebron for a staggering 13 touchdowns. During his tenure as the Eagles' offensive coordinator, he force-fed Zach Ertz for a massive 12-touchdown season. Reich loves to dictate terms to the defense using his tight ends. And now? Now he has Mason Taylor, a player armed with that 79% contested catch rate. When you connect Taylor's elite, ultra-aggressive catching mechanics to Reich's historic play-calling tendencies, the stage isn't just set for a good season. It is set for an absolute, undeniable, league-wide breakout.
But honestly, it isn't even just about Taylor. The Jets' front office has constructed a brilliant, versatile, 3-headed monster at the tight end position. This ensures they can completely disguise their schematic intentions on every single snap. You have Mason Taylor acting as the primary red zone assassin. Then you have first-round rookie Kenyon Sadiq. He's the guy running the razor-sharp angle routes, bending the deep seams, and stressing out the safeties as a highly explosive weapon right in the middle of the field. And rounding it out, you have Jeremy Ruckert, the enforcer. He's out there delivering the punishing down blocks and flawlessly executing the critical kickout blocks on aggressive defensive ends in the run game. They have the exact, highly specialized personnel required to execute Frank Reich's heavy tight end system flawlessly. When these guys are on the field, defenses will legitimately not know whether to brace for a punishing downhill gap run or a lethal play-action pass over the top.
Part 4. The clock is ticking. So, we have seen the evidence, haven't we? We have methodically dismantled those absurd preseason rankings. We've identified the fierce, highly competitive internal rebellion taking place right now in training camp. And we've analyzed the granular, specific schematic advantages this team holds. But potential means absolutely nothing without execution on Sundays. The cinematic arc of this entire offseason is rapidly reaching its climax. The clock is ticking, the regular season is rapidly approaching, the talent inside that building is undeniable, the depth is there, the scheme is there, but the execution? The execution is completely mandatory. There are no more excuses left. The spectacular failure of the 2025 season casts a very long, very dark shadow over this franchise. Frank Schwab and all the national critics, they are just waiting. They are waiting for the other shoe to drop. They are expecting the collapse. They are fully 100% expecting the New York Jets to crash and burn and earn that top 5 draft pick. So now it is entirely on the shoulders of this coaching staff. It's on Armand Membo to anchor that offensive line. It's on Marcelina McCrary-Ball to patrol the middle of the defense. It's on Mason Taylor to dominate the red zone. And it's on this brand new downfield offense to step onto the field and prove that they can finally transcend the agonizing primetime failures of the past. The margin for error here is literally zero.
Which brings us to the ultimate question, the one question that will truly define the balance of power in the AFC for the 2026 season. Will the New York Jets wake up, harness this undeniable talent, and completely rewrite the script? Or will the critics, with their incredibly disrespectful 31st overall ranking, be proven absolutely right in the end? The sleeping giant has all the weapons it needs. Now we just wait to see if it finally wakes up. Thank you for tuning into this explainer on NFL Nexus. If you felt the intensity of this breakdown and love this level of detail, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a like, and I want to hear from you down in the comments. Are the Jets a 31st ranked disaster waiting to happen, or are they a legitimate playoff contender hiding in plain sight? Let me know, and remember, you can support our deep dives by becoming a channel member today. Until next time, keep your eyes on the turf.